All right, YouTube, we are live. Welcome one, welcome all. Just make sure this thing's coming through. Showing that I am streaming here. I'm just waiting for my own feed to show up on YouTube. It's about a 20-second delay. And there we go, 18 seconds. Lovely. So, welcome one, welcome all. Hello, everybody. How many of you guys are in here at the moment? There's a couple of you guys in here. Hello, hello, hello. I got the chat open. Awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on today's midday update, guys. This is Mark checking in from TRADEPRO Academy headquarters here in Toronto, Ontario on today's date, Tuesday, September the 24th, 2019. We are coming into the last handful of days trading in September here, and it's been a little bit quieter than we've originally anticipated. You know, usually we start seeing volume and volatility kicking back in around the first Tuesday after Labor Day. However, this year things seem to have changed a little bit, and summer volatility's kind of extended itself out into a good part of September. And we'll see, hopefully, as we get into October and into Q4, we start seeing a little bit more of volume and volatility coming back in the markets, a little bit more direction. And, you know, recently this trade war is kind of it's led to volatility in the summer, but it's also leading to kind of a risk-off environment, and that's getting traders a little bit hesitant to put on any size because of the lack of clarity in the market. So anytime it's kind of murky waters, this is kind of what you tend to see, a reduction in volume, and traders are a little bit, not that they're hesitant, but they're not putting on the size that they normally would because of this uncertainty in the markets. All right, so that's what we got on there. Let's take a look at some of the drivers we had over the U.S. session of this trading day. Georgie covered a couple of the things that happened overnight. I'll summarize these guys here briefly. We had U.S. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin saying that China talks, or said talks with China Vice Premier Liu will resume during the week of October 7th. And the other key one coming out overnight came out of the UK. The UK Supreme Court issues its verdict on Bojo's suspension that it was unlawful. Judgment is unanimous on judiciability. All right, so Georgie covered that. As far as the U.S. session, we did have a couple of um, agenda or not agenda economic releases on the agenda. Most notably was the September Richmond Fed Manufacturing Index, which came in at a very big miss of -9 versus +1 expected. Volume of new orders dropped from 2 prior to -14 prior, so huge miss on this the Richmond Fed Manufacturing Index. We also had U.S. September consumer confidence came in at a miss as well, 125.1 versus 133 expected. We had the July S&P Case-Shiller, the 20-city month-over-month figures came in at 0.02% versus 0.10 expected. And that is pretty much what we had on that front. The other major driver that came out throughout this session, which is likely that result of that nasty sell-off below those 29.98s, was the fact that President Trump was addressing UN General Assembly this afternoon, and he mentioned that the future belongs to patriots, not globalists. China has not adopted promised reforms. China uses heavy state subsidies and steals IP, uses currency manipulation. All right, so we kind of pooped on China's parade, if you will, throughout this General Assembly, and that was not seen too kindly by traders. And you saw a nasty little spill from the 29.98s, and we've hit a low of the previous day low at the 29.8350s. All right, so nice little spill on the back of that. And that's pretty much what we had on the agenda. Nothing really else on the agenda for the remainder of today's session. So again, I don't really anticipate much more coming out, but it's always good to have a new squawk handy for things like this. When Trump can say something that might move the markets, whoops, it pays to have a new squawk like that. All right, guys. So let's jump onto our charts here. Let me find my OBS and flip over to the chart setting. All right, there is our charts. Hello, George. Hello, George. Let's see if I do this. Can I see more? Awesome. There we go. I can see a little bit more now. All right. So there's 25 of you guys watching. Only George has come in and said hello. So if you guys want to hear a little bit more on this, come say hello as well. All right. So here is our chart. This is our quote board right here. Up top, you've got crude oil right up here, and just down below, you have got the S&P 500, also known as the SPOOs. We do have a couple of questions on why we call them the SPOOs, and so I'll explain that here quickly. S&P 500 traders are, naturally lazy people, and so on the floor when there was the open outcry, S&P 500 was too much to say when there's millions of dollars on the line based on a couple of words. So you erase the 5, and that becomes the SPOO, and that's where the SPOOs comes from with the little Z there. All right, so that's what these SPOOs are. SPOOs are simply just a floor name for the S&P 500. All right, so now that we've got that little tidbit out of the way, hello, Richard. Let's take a look at the volumes. So volumes are actually starting to pick up a little bit, at least on the S&P 500 here, 730,000 contracts. If you'll remember, around yesterday or so, we had around, I think it was around 550, 600,000 contracts on this time of the session, and that's showing you relatively light volume. And I would anticipate this to start picking up back to the $1 million mark by this time in the afternoon. The past couple of weeks, especially last week, due to FOMC statement, a lot of traders are kind of watching what would happen on that front. We had that release come through, and now we've got until till October, till the next FOMC meeting, until we should start seeing some more volatility coming in, and we're looking for this volume to start picking up going into October, Q4 of 2019, and into the remainder of the year until next summer. All right, so that's what we got here, 732,000 contracts. We are marginally down on today's session. Again, this number is not making too much sense. Previous day close came in at the 3,001 halves, it seems, and we are currently down at the 89 quarters, and so down 0.2%. On crude oil, volume relatively light, to be honest. 368,000 contracts is actually very light relative to what we normally see of around 500 to 600,000 at this part of the session. So crude, we're seeing a little bit less volume. However, daily change percentage is also showing down 1.52%. Previous day close came in at the 58.53s. Last traded price is around the 57s. So this number is making a little bit more sense. It is showing you that we are down from the previous day close. We are also down from the pit open, which was at 57.98. However, we seem to be grinding slowly back towards that level. At this point in time, downside still looks like the right side. However, we are seeing a bit of a counter trend bullish momentum coming up into these overnight lows around these 57.90s or so. All right, so that's the quote board. Let's get that puppy out of the way, and let's have a quick gander at our pivot charts. And you guys know that we like to take a look at these pivot charts, not necessarily for trading levels, but just to give us an overall idea of what the larger term, even intra-weekly trend looks like. This is the 1 hour bar chart. All right, so what you have been seeing, kind of back to what I was saying yesterday, is that we were seeing a bit of a consolidation starting to form here, and we did resolve to the downside. You guys see we broke down, rotated back up, kind of held the pivot, flushed out from there, and at this point in time, kind of held between the previous day low, which is actually right around here, these 73s. Oh no, that doesn't make sense. CLX, yeah. Anyway, somewhere around these 57.44s is where I have S1 right now. We did have a bit of a bounce off of it. You guys can see we did trade into it here, rotated up, didn't make a fresh low, which is quite interesting as we start climbing back up towards that open and the overnight low right up here. So this is ultimately where I'm looking for sellers to start stepping back in and press this thing back towards these lows. That's kind of what I've got on the session so far. So long as we remain below that pivot, the fact that we did have that little consolidation that resolved to the downside, kind of retested the upside of that level and we're starting to fade off, showing me, downside might be the right side. And so that's the way that I'm going to be sticking with the trend as long as we remain below the open. If we get back above the open, we'll likely get a move back up to the top end of our range, which will coincide with that pivot point. All right, so still looking bearish below the open. If we get back above that open, I'll likely shift back to the sidelines. Not to say that I will be looking for longs up into that level, but if we do disqualify shorts up here, that could be another potential level to short. Back above that pivot, you can see we'll likely get back towards the upper half of this little range. And at that point, I'm not really looking to buy unless we get a move to the R1, then rotates back down, gives us a new higher low, and then we could look to pick it back up. All right, so that's what I'm getting on crude. You guys are seeing sellers are starting to step in, and on the 10 tick, we are getting a little notch of volume starting to pick up here on this downside. So we'll see if the sellers can press this thing back below. I don't know why that previous day low is showing up there, but that must have been the previous day. Oh, that was 2 days ago. Sorry, that was on the 22nd. So that makes sense why I can't see it on here. All right, so we'll see for a move as long as this level kind of holds between these 90s to the 58s. We'll look for the continuation back down to these 40s. Looking at the S&P 500, we kind of had this. We had this level forming here. We were kind of around the pivot yesterday during yesterday's midday update, and I was saying, sell side looks like it's picking up control. We are seeing higher lows and lower lows and lower highs. We were up around the pivot yesterday, and I was saying, this level looks like it makes sense for sellers to come in and press this thing back to fresh lows. I didn't quite hold the pivot. We did get a bit of a climb overnight up into that R1 zone. However, what you can see is we tested it, rotated it again, and now we've flushed back below the pivot, and we are looking for a new press to new lows. 29.80 will be a big support level. All right, so watching how that kind of reacts, you can see we are finding some right around these 83 halves, the previous day low. We are finding some support. Here we're getting a couple of rotations, and we'll see where this thing goes. It is right back in pretty big support, right? So I'm still looking for downside. The fact that it came over the pivot is okay. However, the trend of lower lows and lower highs is still kind of in effect. You guys are seeing that here. This one rotated up, broke down. This one broke that previous high. However, in the context of things, it didn't get back above that high, and so we are rolling over now back below these 80s. I think we'll have a little bit more short-term weakness here on the equities, and then we can look for potential plays lower. That being said, if I open up my spooge chart here and I zoom out to that 29.80, all right, you guys can see this was a pretty nice level. It looks a little bit choppy here, but there was a lot of rotations in here. Support, 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 rotation, support, 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 support that led to a big rally, support that led to another big rally, and here we are once again right back at support. So will we see another big rally? That's to be determined. What I am seeing from this level, however, is that first rally out of it took us up to new, not all the way to new all-time highs, took us to the 30.24s. The second move off of that level took us basically to the same level. The third bounce off of that level gave us a lower high. And so what I am seeing is kind of a horizontal support, and the fact that these peaks are starting to get lower highs, which is showing me there's a bit of a buildup of sell pressure coming in around these tops. And so while this looks like a good support, I don't really think that we'll get back above these 12 quarters. What I'm thinking is that we'll likely get a little bit of a bouncer, somewhere up to where these levels kind of coincide. So don't really like drawing just trend lines per se. But if I were to take this guy, extend that out, you guys will see that we held. There was a first high. Here's the second guy, and we are coming into that level another rotation up. I don't really think it should get back above these 5.75, '06 level if we're going to make a real effort to press back below these 29.80s. All right, so that's what I'm seeing at this point. I think sell side's a little bit late if you're trying to get into it now. Better play would be wait for a breakdown of those 29.80s. Alternatively, you might be able to counter trend fade this back up to that 5-day point of control and into these VWAPs overnight low, where you also might see some selling coming in. So while I am biased to the short side, where we're at based on the current range, I think we might get a little bit more of buy momentum going into the latter half of today's session. Granted, if Trump comes out and tweets about China or anything to that regard, that's basically going to invalidate this. But as it stands, this is what the structure is showing us, and that's the way that we're going to go about playing it. All right, so that's what I got for you guys on today's session. I hope you guys enjoyed this one so far. I'm going to do the TradePro Performance Index next, but if you guys are here, there's about 22 of you now. If you've got any questions or any other markets that you'd like us to take a quick look at, feel free to throw those into the chat. If it is anything other than futures, I will have to go on TradingView where I'll give you more of a swing trading kind of point of view. But if it's something with regards to gold or something like that, we can also do that. So do let me know in the interim while I do this update. So here is our TradePro Performance Index, and we have finally gone back to around what are normal averages, around 67%. And what I am seeing, September 24th, 51% were up on today's session, just under 20% were flat, and just under 30% were down on today's session. So overall, 71.43% of the room finished either up or flat, and the remaining 28% or so finished on the downside. So it was a bit of a challenging session in the morning. It's not to say there weren't opportunities, but the real opportunities kind of came as we were signing out, really around 10:30, once we got that nice little sell-off, or once we got Trump started to talk about China and how they got to be patriotic, how Americans got to be patriotic, and how Trump is going to look after the best interest of his people. The market kind of took that negatively, and we saw that big dump on that front. All right, so that's what I'm seeing there. TradePro Performance Index is looking good. Crude oil, sellers are looking to step in here, kind of playing out with the analysis that we kind of just provided here. Nice resistance up there. We did just break below that previous day low. Volume's kind of kicking up. So selling should get pretty aggressive coming down into these lows. And S&P 500 also looking quite aggressive. Didn't even want to get right back above that. We held those 89s, and we are holding kind of some structure here. So at the moment, downside looks like the right side. We do have some structure. You could look to sell, those 88s. However, this is a little bit extended, and I'm thinking we might get a little bit more of a pop before the real selling starts to come through. Right? Could be wrong. We could just flush right through the level, but that's why we had the plan. As you guys know, nice flush below those 80s. We can start looking for rotations back up to sell them down into those 70s or so. All right, so that's what we got. I'm not seeing any other questions about any other markets or anything like that. So I will take that as a sign that you guys want to get back to the markets. So let's flip back on to myself here. And let's sign off so you guys know what the 3 rules are if you will be trading into the remainder of today's session. You got to remain patient, you got to remain diligent, and you got to remain disciplined. All right, until next time, guys, good luck and good trading. Take care. And last thing, if you guys do enjoy these midday updates and the morning updates, please make sure to smash that like button. There we are. Turn that like button blue. There's been statistics that show by hitting the like button, you actually become a better trader. All right, so I'm just kidding about that. Don't quote me, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. If you smash that like button, you'll get some good karma coming your way. All right, that's going to be me for today, guys. Take care. Good luck and good trading. Bye now.